show you in this small tutorial how I create my Bob Ross inspired trees that I put on everything. I've been painting these for probably 25 years, maybe longer, when I first saw them, created by Bob Ross, and then I duplicated them in every medium possible. But in this case, we're going to use acrylic paint. I'm going to show you on some watercolor paper and on some canvas, and then we're going to do this little wood piece. So on my palette, I have cadmium yellow medium hue, leftover pink that we're not going to use, sap green, phthalo green, blue shade, is it burnt umber? Yes, burnt umber, Payne's gray, and titanium white. These are all heavy body, either Liquitex or Winsor and Newton, except for the pink, but again, we're not using the pink. I mean, unless you want pink trees, we could make one. All right, so what I've used to make my trees is a very old fan brush, right? It was actually used for oil paints when I did oil paintings, and I know you shouldn't change between oil and acrylic because one's what, I get it, I know, but I don't like rules. So I stopped using oil paint, and so I wanted to still use my brushes. So I washed them, and now I use them for acrylic. But should you do that? Probably not. Or do it. It doesn't matter. But I realize not everybody's going to have a 20-year-old fan brush that's really stiff. And so I'm going to use some other tools and some other brushes. So to start with, I have a small 8 flat brush. This is from Briarees. You can get, you know, a small one in those handy packs at Michael's. They're really cheap brushes. They'll all do. I mean, I could use this one too. So what I like to do is I'll layer in first my darkest shades, right? So I'm going to take some sap green, some phthalo green, and I'm going to mix those together. I may touch a little bit of the Payne's gray. And trees are not one color, so, you know, if this is not mixed to a perfect shade, that's fine. We're going to be doing layers, so I can even put a little brown in my base there. All right, so let's say we have a little grassy area, a little grassy nook, right? Let's say right in here. Well, I guess it's not spring. We're going to do Christmas trees. So probably I should have done snow, but you can do these for all sorts of colors. Anyway, all right, so we have our grassy area. Now we're going to go in with that same color, and we're going to make believe our tree lives right here. And we don't need necessarily the whole trunk. Sometimes I only go down to like there. You know, if you look at trees outside, obviously outside, but if you look at trees in nature, you can't see the whole trunk, right? And now, basically with the corner of my brush, I'm going to go in and I'm going to just start tapping out the little top part of my tree, right? You're going to leave some spaces. It's important to have spaces that come out between the branches and the leaves. Right? And you start tapping. Tap, tap, taparoo. And as we get down further and it gets fatter, I'm just going to grab a little bit more paint. I might start moving my brush so I can use more of it instead of just the corner. So the corner up here, because it's so thin, right? Let me just start tapping them out back and forth. Your tree can look however you want, right? That's what Bob Ross would say. You would say, you do you. So I tap across, I go back, I pick up more of my paint, I get darker towards the bottom, just naturally because it's the bottom of the tree. It's gonna get less light. And it doesn't look great right now because we just have this one kind of color, you know, in place. Let me tap him out. Tap out that base. Tap it. Right. Go back in here. We can add a little bit more of that just plain phthalo green. It's darker. You need the dark to play off the light. So that's our tree number 1. We're going to come back in here. We're going to do tree number 2. Right there. Corner of the brush. And then we tap it out. Now in this one I didn't do the whole trunk, but if you want to, you can. It's totally your tree. You know, maybe in your tree you see the trunk more than in mine. All right, so there's tree number 2. And we're gonna put a little friend, because I like a lot of trees that come in 3 for some reason. So we're gonna come over here and we're gonna do a little baby tree. Side of the brush. Tap him out. Maybe he's a little crooked. Who knows? He's still growing, right? And if you're unsure and you feel like, oh, I need some more trunk because it doesn't look right to you, you know, come back in here. I'm just touching some of that brown and I'm just going along the line where the trunk would be to kind of give it ever so much shape. You can do that with branches too, but I don't get too much into branches on these trees. But if you want, you can do that. But if you wanted to just stop now and come back, I like to work still on wet. I like to work wet on wet. So I will come back in here now when it's still wet. I'm going to take my plain white and I'm going to basically come back. You don't need to do the the stem, you know, but you want to do that kind of same motion where you're going to come back here on the edge and you're going to tap a little bit. You're just going to tap less than what you tapped before because you just want to sprinkle on a little bit of the snow, keeping the dark places in some areas. And then in other areas, the snow will just kind of take over and you may not see as much green. But you're going to be doing kind of that same tap, tap. I'm kind of moving my brush from one corner to the other, like I flip it. You don't have to. I'm going to come back in and get some more green. The reason I like to do it while it's wet is because it kind of picks up some of that green color. And what's nice about that is that the snow does not look as bright and white. And you get kind of some varying shades of snow. So I'm tapping. I'm trying to keep with the shape, thinking in terms of like what this might look like. You know, how the snow will kind of like linger on the top portions of like the leaves. That has some thicker snow. Do this last tree. I'm used to always making the top, so I always kind of I always do that with the snow, but you don't have to. Now, I have too much white up here, so I'm going to come back, and I'll come back in some of these areas and add back in some deep green colors where I feel like too much. I went overboard. Right. I'm going to rinse my brush again. Come back over into my green. Right, so I can come back and I can kind of replace some green over some of that white in some areas that, you know, I just don't like the way they look. I don't think it looks, you know, the way I envisioned in my head, whatever it is. You know, this was too much snow at the top. And I might now need to come back in with a little bit more snow because I just kind of made him a little bit bigger, but that's okay. That's how we do it. Admittedly, I don't think I'm as good as a tree painter with this type of brush, but I have been practicing. But that's basically it. You know, come back in. I'll even come back with just the regular Payne's Gray in some of this spot because it's really going to be darker down at the base of your tree. And just kind of put in some of those shapes. You need that darkness for that light to play off of. Even if you make kind of fall trees where you could do the same tree, but then, well, I guess you wouldn't because they're evergreens, but I've done it where they change color and I put them with yellow and orange. But maybe that's a different type of this type of tree. So yeah, so now I'll play here and I'll add just a little bit, come back. This is where you can have two of these brushes going. So you've got one for green. This is the same size. I've got one for white, which I probably should have done from the get-go, but just that hint. Lots of snow happening. And that's my tree on watercolor paper. I feel like it's different on every different type of substrate. So we're going to go now and we're going to do canvas. So this is just a canvas board. I did wet it. I always kind of wet my canvas board and then dry it really good. So it's not soaking wet. There's not like water sitting on it, but it's definitely not dry. It's dry down here, but I was only imagining painting up here. What I am going to do is put in a little sky. All right, so I'm going to show you one with my newer fan brush. Same concept. We're going to load this bad boy up. This is a very, 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 very soft fan brush, but it works. Because the concept is pretty much the same as the other flat brush. Okay. All right, so I'm gonna go and say my first little tree lives there. Corner of my fan brush. Tap it out. It's going to mix with some of that background color because it's still wet. So you could, if you wanted, you could wait for it to dry. So that fan brush gives it kind of more of a bit of a like wispier look, and you can see I'm already picking up some of that white. I was down here, and so when I come back up, the green gets a little bit lighter. So I'm going to come back in, pick up some more of my dark green, my burnt umber, and we're going to make a friend here. Tap, tap. Tap, tap, taparoo. Right, so he's bigger. And he's going to come more forward. Just going to be tapping him out. I'm going to pick up some of that white just naturally and come back and highlight some areas here. Just with that white, that lighter shade. And there's a lot, so I'm going to come back with the darker because I need the darker to play off of. You know, this is a hill that comes down into. More dark. There's that. And because I like 3, we're going to put a little one back here. I flip my brush over to get that paint from the other side. And there's a little one. We can come in here. A little bit of, this is pretty thick, so that's why it's going on so clunky, like, but I like that in my paint. I like that texture. I don't like it all to be smooth. This is just a round that I normally use this for watercolor, but again, whatever works. Just that one in there. All right, so I don't really like this. Just gonna tap that out a little. Tap out what you don't like, what you feel like should be a little bit different, right? So now I've got my base of my trees, and you can come in if you want and be like, I need to have a little bit, not with that white, but I need a little bit more of a trunk if you want. You can also come in with your knife if you've got one. You want to get really Bob Ross-like, come in, get a little roll, and you can come in and put a little trunk in wherever you think there might be one. Some of that should get covered in the next step, of course, right? You wouldn't see all of that. It's very chunky. It's very chunky. You could tap some of it out. All right, we're gonna wash this brush because I do not have another one of these. All right, we're gonna go not into the pink, go into just the white. It's gonna have a little bit of pink in it, but that's okay. Make sure it's like that and without any extra hairs. Okay. All right. So we're gonna go back right in here and we're gonna do our tap dance. Tap it out. And I'm gonna go back and again, start tapping it out. This is picking up a lot of the green underneath because it's pretty thick. I don't mind it. It gives us that variant in kind of the shades and the values throughout. My top is crooked, but there are worse things in the world. You can try to wipe off some of that green. So when I go back into my white, I get more white. Come here. And if your paint's not sticking, it's because it's too thick on top of other thick paint. So you either need to wait for it to dry or come back or water down your white. So I'm gonna come over here. I'm gonna take a little bit of water and I'm gonna put it on my canvas because my other water here has color in it already, which I don't wanna deal with because I want my white to be white or green, white. But now I've watered that down and I should be able to bloop, make a bloop on top. So what do? It doesn't always happen the first time. So we'll go back. This is that same brush I had that blue on before. I'm gonna put that sky back in. It's a little too watery. And we'll come back to the top of that in a second once that dries a little bit. And if you see this happening where the paint's just not sticking anymore, just leave it. Just leave this spot until it dries a little, and then you come back to it. It's perfectly normal. Right. We'll wait on that tree. And my green and white still on here for the bottom of this tree. We can still tap out the rest of him, except for the top. And that was my fault. I put way too much paint on wet paint, really watered down paint, I should say, on this brush to have it be thin at the top there. It just was not gonna work. And then this one, same thing, barely touch, tap out. Okay. We're gonna go back. I'm gonna just go and use this other brush to put the top of this tree back on. This is my flat brush from the other painting. right there. And then we're going to go ever so gently. And you may want to just wait for that to completely dry before you start going and touching it again. I am, because I just want to show you what that looks like. You might want to round some of these out a little. If they're a little too straight. You know, think about the branch shapes. And they're not all perfectly, you know, symmetrical, and you don't see everything. All right. So I want to get just a little bit more darkness in there, only because I did a lot of white. So I'm going to rinse off my fan brush. I'm going to dry it so it's not as watery. Go back into my green. A little bit of burnt umber. A little bit of Payne's Gray. Again, it's not perfectly mixed in different parts of the brush. There's different shades. And I'm just going to plop in here. Some areas where I think the snow got a little out of control. And so my tree may have like just lost some of its shape. Or if it looks too, like, I don't like if it looks too perfect. You know, like there should be wonkiness to it, and it should definitely be darker towards the bottom. Nothing appears in nature like symmetrical, I don't think. I don't know if that's a true fact, but it sounds good. It sounds like it is. All right, so those are my trees on canvas. Right. And then the last one we're going to do is I'm going to put little trees on this little round, like my other rounds, right? This time I'm going to use my trusted old handy fan brush that I've had forever. I'm going to lay in my white for my snow. This is a round Briaree's 10. You could really use any brush for this. Right, so I have the majority of my white down here already. And I'm going to go right here. I'm going to make a line for the top. And then I'm going to go doot doot. And these I'm making, you know, not as big of a tree. So it's like only the top half, right, of these big ones. It's like I'm only making a little bitty tree in this case. Just stopping right there. I'm just doing a kind of tapping back and forth motion. See, I've picked up some of that white in my brush just from tapping in there. I'm going to go over some of these little pieces. I'm going to add a little bit more to my corner because these are really tiny trees. Just going to get some of that lighter green before I even go in and put more white on top of that. Just for some variety. And then maybe we'll do another little guy. Right there. That's it. Those are my three little guys. I'm going to pull a little bit of my green down, but not too much. There's too much in this brush. So I'm going to wash this brush. Just took a little bit of white. Blend a little bit of that green into my snow. And because these are fun and they have the different colors in them, I'm gonna put a little pink in there, but rinse that out. So I'm just gonna want some red. Some white, rather. It's regular white. I was thinking, actually, I might put some gold on my tree. Ooh. All right, so I go through the same process over and over again. The top, you can do all the tops. Top, top. Tap it out. A little bit more. That's getting a little bit, I need it to be a little bit thinner. So I'm just gonna add some water to my white. I'm gonna add some water to my white, and I'm gonna just kind of brush it off a little bit more, just so it's not that too gloopy. I picked up a lot of the green in my white, which I'm not loving. I'm just going to try to get a little bit more white without green. And then I've lost some darkness in that bottom there. So I'm going to actually come in first. I'm going to put some darkness back in here. And in this case, when I'm using this, I'm only using the corner because these trees are so tiny. And I might need to add some water to it too. And then we're going to go back in with our white. Oh, that's better. That white pops a little bit more than that greeny white. Just in here. Need a little bit of water. A little bit dark down there. Come back in. Add a little white. Just tapping the littlest tap. I'm coming in here, put a little too much water on that first tap. So I'm using a dry brush to just soak it up. I mean, it was like a dot, but I see it. I'll do one more. That's just too wet there, but it's just too wet, so I'll just keep fucking with it until I mess it up. That sounds right. And anytime you feel like you've added a little too much, I can take it out. And that's it. So that's my happy trees. A painting, well, wood, canvas, and just a regular piece of watercolor. You can see the differences with the brush. I personally have probably just like these better because it's what I'm used to. But I mean, they're very similar. that you can get from different types of brushes. You could even probably do this with a round brush. So if we went and we took in a round brush, let's say we wanted to make a friend there, I'm going to go a little bit smaller. Let's say he's got a friend right here. Right? We could come with a round brush and tap him in. And he's leaning a little. There he is. Put the white on now. And as I get to the bottom, I'm pressing a little bit harder to make those longer, bigger brush strokes. That's it. I mean, you could do it really with any brush. The biggest thing I feel like is that you're making sure that you have the space where you can see the background, and where you're also making sure you've got the darkness, the shadow in places as much as you've got the highlight. So you need the white, but you also need the dark, or they won't play. Won't be able to distinguish if it's all the same. And if I had more time, I'd probably come back in here and I'd shape these a little bit more. These became a little bit too straight. No, I like them a little bit like them a little messy. But let me know if you have any questions. If you've enjoyed this tutorial, let me know. I'd love to, you know, get your feedback. If you want to see more of this type of stuff, let me know. And have a great day.